Hello, everyone, and I welcome you all in this series of lecture on environmental economics. My name is Nishant Nair. So, before beginning, a brief introduction about myself. I did my bachelor's in commerce from University of Delhi. Then I did my master's in economics from CCSU Meerut. Then I appeared for the UGC NET examination and I qualified for JRF with 99.41 percentile. And currently, I'm pursuing PhD in economics. So, let's begin. When we study environmental economics, the very first question which comes to our mind is what is environmental economics? You must have studied microeconomics, macroeconomics, industrial economics, international economics, growth and development. These all are subdisciplines of economics. Like all these subdisciplines, we have a new subdiscipline which is environmental economics. And it is a recent development in the field of economics which is hardly 60 to 70 years old. So, what is environmental economics? Environmental economics is that subdiscipline of economics in which we study about the impact of economic activities on environment. Let me give you an example and you will understand it better. All right. So, there is a forest and it comprises of many trees. These trees are cut down in order to procure timber. And then this timber is further processed and it is transformed into furniture. And then this furniture is sold to the consumer. Whosoever demands it, we are going to sell it to that particular consumer. So, final value of this furniture will be added to the GDP and it will contribute positively to the GDP. Okay, so it has contributed positively to the GDP. Now, I have a question for you. What about the loss of trees and what about the loss of biodiversity that we have experienced because of the cutting down of these trees in the forest? Are we taking that loss into consideration while calculating the GDP? No, we are not. So you see, on one hand, you have an economic activity which is contributing positively to the GDP, and on the other, there is an impact of this economic activity on the environment, which we are not going to consider while calculating the GDP. So now we are understanding that what is environmental economics? It is that subdiscipline of economics in which we will study about the impact of economic activities of production and consumption on the environment. And how does the activities of production and consumption impact the environment? Activities of production and consumption impacts the environment through externalities. You all must have studied about externalities in your microeconomic theory. And what is an externality? An externality is an indirect benefit or indirect cost which the activities of production and consumption creates for some third party. Producers and consumers indulge in their activity, however, they are going to create certain benefits or costs for others who are not at all related to them. This is an externality. This is how the economic activities impacts the environment through externalities. So we have economic agents and their economic activities. And when we consider their impact on the environment, what we get is environmental economics. Let's move forward. Now, the next question which we need to answer is that why do we study environmental economics? Or why there is a need to study environmental economics? And the answer would be very basic. And the answer is so that we can answer the question that how does economic activities impacts the environment. So let's understand what is the linkage between economics and environment. You all must be aware about the concept of scarcity. And what is this concept? This concept basically tells us that we have to fulfill unlimited bonds with limited resources. And these resources are scarce. The majority of these resources are natural resources or environmental resources. and they take millions and millions of years to generate and to reproduce themselves. And as we indulge in the activities of production and consumption, these resources are used more rigorously. And because of this, their available stocks keeps on depleting. And as you all must be aware that environment is really very important for our survival. So we need to pay attention to it and we need to see that the environment which we endure right now is endowed by our future generations as well. Having answered the question, what is environmental economics and why do we need to study environmental economics? Let's move forward and try to understand the relationship between environment and development. You must have studied the Kuznets curve in public finance, wherein we study the relationship between inequality and GDP. And the Kuznets curve is an inverted U-shaped curve. Similarly, like Kuznets curve, we have environmental Kuznets curve, which is an inverted U-shaped curve, and it shows the relationship between environmental degradation and GDP. Now let's understand that why such a peculiar shape of the environmental Kuznets curve. So on the horizontal axis, we have taken GDP per capita, which represents the economic growth, whereas on the vertical axis, we have taken environmental degradation. Now you see that the shape of the EKC, which is environmental Kuznets curve, is an inverted U-shaped curve. All right. There is this point, turning point, and up to turning point, what you will see is that there is a one-to-one relationship between environmental degradation and GDP per capita. I'm talking about this relationship. Okay. So it represents direct relationship. What does this mean? That's that as the GDP grows, GDP increases, the environmental degradation also increases, which means that the quality of environment degrades with the increasing GDP. Now, after this turning point, the relationship between environmental degradation and GDP is a negative relationship. And what does this relationship tells you? It says that as the GDP grows, the environmental degradation decreases or it falls, which means the quality of the environment increases. And hence, both these relationship initially positive relationship and afterwards the negative relationship. It gives us this inverted U-shaped environmental Kuznets curve. The next question that would come to your mind is that why such a shape of the EKC? Why an inverted U-shaped curve? Let's answer this question. So you see, there are certain effects. The very first one is scale effect. The next one is the structural effect. Then we have the technology effect. And lastly, the income effect. Now let's understand all these effects so as to understand why is the shape of EKC an inverted U shape. The very first one is the scale effect. And what does the scale effect tells you? It tells us about the scale of production. As an economy progresses, it requires more and more goods to be produced. That is, the scale has to be increased. And to produce more output, more inputs are required. And the important thing over here is that the technology does not change, which means we are using the same old and obsolete technology for the production. And because of that old technology, to produce more, we require more input. Hence, the environmental quality in the economy degrades because we are going to produce more. And when we'll produce more, we are going to create more pollution. So we have the scale effect. Next, we have the structural effect. And what does structural effect tells us? It tells us about the change in the structure of the economy. When an economy is at the initial levels of development, it is shifting from agriculture to industries. And when an economy shifts from agriculture to industries, the pollution in the economy increases because industries are going to create more pollution. So the environmental degradation would rise in the economy along with the rising GDP. However, when the economy changes its structure from industries to services, the pollution in the economy is going to fall, which means the environmental quality will increase. And along with the increase in the environmental quality, the GDP of the economy will also increase because there is a shift from industries to services, and services will generate more GDP. Next, we have the technology effect. And what does the technology effect tells us? That when an economy is in the initial stage of its development, it is not concerned about the technology which it uses for production. And initially, the economy will be using brown technology. And what is in brown technology? It is a technology which creates more pollution and it uses more resources. But as an economy progresses and it moves further on the path of development, the general public becomes more conscious about the environment. They want goods which are environmental friendly and which creates less pollution. So the producers are forced to move from brown technology to greener technology. And because of this, what happens? The pollution level in the economy falls, environmental quality increases along with the increase in GDP. Lastly, we have the income effect. Environmental quality, it's a luxury good, and the income elasticity of demand for a luxury good is positive and greater than 1. This means that at lower level of incomes, we are not concerned about the environmental quality. However, at higher levels of income, we want more and more of the environmental quality. And it is evident in the whole world as well. If you see the underdeveloped or developing nations, in those nations, the environmental quality is really very bad. And on the other hand, the income of the people is also really very less. Whereas if you see in developed nations, the environmental quality is high. Along with that, if you see the income of the people is also very high. So we have the income effect. All these effects all together gives us the inverted U-shaped environmental coordinates curve. All right, friends, that's it from my side. Before wrapping up, I would like to say that this is my very first video and I might have made certain mistakes, so please pardon me for that. And your suggestions are most welcome. Keep learning, keep working hard. Thank you, and have a nice day.